welcome to another episode of Uncertain Medics. My name is Adi, and I'm a doctor and filmmaker, and I'm reaching out to people in the healthcare profession who have embraced uncertainty in some way, whether it's personally or professionally, and using it as a way to reflect on our uncertain times. So I'm here with Samir Shah. Hello, Samir. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, hi there. Would you like me to say some stuff about myself as
Yeah,
well?
go for it. Give us a little intro. Yeah.
Okay. So, I'm a neuropsychiatrist. I run memory services in Waltham Forest, which is an area of London,
Yeah.
uh, which in and of itself is a fairly traditional route, I suppose. But the route there has been a pretty uncertain one,
Hmm.
and I suppose that's been through some personal health challenges where things stopped and start. There have been times where I've felt that I could do better than certain things, and perhaps that's part of the personality where you're a bit impatient about things. And also, medicine has a good side where there's a lot of certainty, but in that you know that you're going to have a job. But the bad side where it's a long slog to get anywhere.
Yeah.
And so over that time, I know that you mentioned that you're a filmmaker as well. I did some consultancy work around films, and then most recently we've worked on um, an augmented reality way of orientating people with dementia, which is the main set of
Mm.
people that I work with.
Yeah.
So that's been perhaps on and off for the past year and a half or so.
Hmm. Great. Okay. Well, thanks for that. What are you up to now? I mean, obviously, we're currently in an extension of our lockdown and sort of, about a month into this whole pandemic, really, here in the UK. So, what's going on in your life?
So there's a lot of learning about living with a lockdown.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, if I'm honest, cabin fever. There's a lot, and
Yeah.
I think we're all a bit uncertain about what to do. We
Mm.
probably have on average 3 Zoom meetings a day,
Yeah.
and things change. I think they're calming down a bit now, but there's lots of things that are coming through that are changing. It, it, it's it's been a mixture of terrifying. You can see a light at the end of the tunnel, which is which has a lot of opportunity for a lot of the things that we as people who want to sort of make things a bit better and a bit more accessible for people,
Yeah.
uh, such as remote consultations. That's one thing, but there are lots of other areas where we've had to push it through that we've been wanting to do for a long time, and that's actually been part of my previous frustration with the NHS in the past, where something you feel, even though you may not have the whole story about it, you feel is very simple, taking 4 or 5 years when in your heart it can be much faster. Yeah, so that's been quite exciting, but yes, it's very scary. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's been lots of examples of things where, as you say, it would have normally taken, 45 years to push forward in the NHS, and now it's happening in 45 minutes, literally.
Hmm.
And we've just suddenly removed so many barriers and just allowed things to happen. And there's been some great examples of real great creativity and innovation within the NHS. So have you personally had anything that you've been able to push forward in your role?
So the biggest things are really just would be around remote consultations. That would be
Yeah.
the biggest thing. It's something that I've been wanting for a very long time,
Mm.
and there's various barriers, within your team at corporate level. Many people want it, but are often uncertain. And when they're told to do it, and said actually you haven't got another choice, it ends up okay. Well, we've actually done it now, and
Yeah.
these are the things that are good. These are the things that aren't good,
Yeah.
and we can build on that. And it's always that first step that that you can do. And one of the things that we've noticed that, for example, we deal, as I mentioned, with people with dementias. Uh, it means that their relatives can come on the video call with them, and they
Yeah.
might be far away. It might not be very. Whereas normally we'd have to go to their place. They might have to take 2 days off work to come down,
Mm.
see them, be with them, and then if an emergency comes up, it may not happen, which is it doesn't work for anybody, that kind
Mm.
of thing. So there are opportunities that are coming out. Other areas that are happening is that for must be in the past 4 or 5 years, we're looking at um, how somebody would like to be treated by doctors if they don't have capacity, or by any healthcare professional.
Yeah,
And so it doesn't necessarily mean end of life care plans, but that's part of it.
yeah,
And they have suddenly become a very big barrier to something that we're really finding it very easy to talk about people now.
right,
And
yes,
it's all about initial barriers, I think. And
yeah,
so that way, it's been pretty positive, I think.
mhm,
Um, it's obviously a small silver lining in this very difficult time, but it's
absolutely.
there.
I suspect there's a lot of silver linings coming out of this pandemic, which I think we probably won't really get to appreciate until things calm down a bit. Do you think we're going to maintain these silver linings, or are we going to go back to old habits?
Well, I think it's up to the people like us, really, who
Mm,
are already enthusiastic about it,
mm,
to say, well, or okay, what have we learned from this period?
mhm.
What needs to continue to keep people safe?
Yeah.
What are the things that uh, that we've learned that we can continue doing?
Hmm.
So we could say, for example, okay, normally somebody has 3 appointments with us. One of them can be remote.
Hmm.
One of them can focus on end of life care planning.
Yeah.
We can do bits and bobs of certain things and really streamline things and make it much better for people.
Hmm.
And some things will not have worked. Yeah,
Yeah.
some things would have been, they would have been unsatisfactory, but
Hmm.
we do it because we have to. And those things you can adjust or change, or it's the whole mantra of constant evolution
Yeah.
that that we can do. Um, in terms of, I suppose, the other stuff that we're doing, I suppose a lot of that has slowed down quite a lot because you can't
Mm.
test some of the augmented reality things.
Yeah.
And ultimately, what we want is, one of the things around augmented reality was to use tablets to orientate people, but also to connect them to their loved ones. So if we'd perhaps been a year earlier, we'd be deploying it and using it as a sort
Yeah.
of FaceTime for
Yeah. Yeah.
people. So
It almost feels like people who have been working on innovation for the last few years and are now building it up. It's almost like the coronavirus issue has accelerated their growth, but I suspect for others it's probably decelerated it because of maybe the nature of their innovation or just the timing. It just seems wrong to highlight a certain innovation because it's not important to coronavirus at the moment. You know.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's. I think we're very much in danger of the National Health Service becoming a national coronavirus service,
Hmm.
and there's so many other things that are happening that
Yeah.
we can't really forget about. And I think that's, to be fair, very acknowledged.
Mhm.
Um, it's just that the coronavirus is so severe right now that we
Yeah.
have to be, just be aware that there are large groups of people that just aren't being looked after that would normally get looked after and need looking
Indeed.
after. Yeah.
Indeed.
So it's affecting everybody, but I suspect it's affecting the most vulnerable the most, if that makes sense.
Mhm. So how are you finding it now adjusting to this new, I guess, virtual world with your patients and your colleagues? You're maybe a bit more adept to it because of what you've been working on, but how is it affecting you? I mean, in terms of your sort of job
So,
role, in terms of how your kind of approach to it, and do you think it may change the way you act in the future, even if sort of everything clears up and we
well, I
can get
think
back to face to
what
face?
what personally, one of the things that I really did like about sort of the the very specific role that I had was, which I'm sure is very common with lots of people. You have to go to certain places so
Mm,
often. You spend so long traveling, and you, our trust is huge, and it's not to be surprised, but it's something that I found personally very difficult.
mm,
Uh, it's really opened up it, it being acceptable just to dial in,
yeah.
listen, add things, and then continue with whatever you were doing before in a much more
Yeah.
efficient way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, so the other thing that we found really useful is for the team to have really brief video chats
Mm,
almost every day, just to catch up with people because we're a very disparate team, and it's not something we thought about before.
yeah.
So every I don't know, midday or 1 o'clock, we would get together, 15
Mm,
minutes. Any problems? What's your plan for the day? Okay, go.
yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Well,
And
I found that almost with my personal life. I'm now zooming my family every week, and you know, pre-COVID, I might not even see them for a few months at a time. Or the idea of doing a Zoom call would feel really awkward. Even a phone call. We'd WhatsApp every now and then, but now it just seems natural to like just pick up the phone and have a call and chat. So it's funny how that behavior has just changed so quickly, and what's normalized in this sort of period. Um, so do you think we, as I guess as clinicians, do you think this will change the way, I mean, I think the relationship between, coronavirus and healthcare and maybe politics and many other things has changed a lot. Do you think the doctor patient relationship will change, and how?
that's an interesting question. I think that there is a lot to be said for that relationship in terms of you are still the person that the person at the other end trusts.
Yeah.
They still want to see you. They still want to be listened to. They still want to have, even if you feel it's minor or very severe, they still want to get their point across, and they want more than the 5 or 10 minutes that we can often give.
Hmm.
It may be a better way of doing that, using technology much more efficiently. You might be able to use collected data without necessarily seeing them, and then you turn up with all the data in your hands, and you say, "Okay, this is what's happening.
Yeah.
This is what I can see."
Mm.
Um, Again, it's again partly going back to the Dorothy thing that we're doing was to include an element of monitoring with it.
Hmm.
So how many steps somebody's done, the basics of what they're doing, so that when a health professional or even a family member sees them, they know, okay, their activity levels are okay,
Hmm.
they're going to the loo, all of this stuff. So it's about having the right data at the right time, but also, you can't. I think it's really hard to scale up, as they say, that the human touch, but you
Mm.
can scale up other bits of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose it's a great time, I guess, post COVID to do that, because we are going to come out, I guess, the heroes. We already are in this whole crisis. And I think people are now realizing how health is essentially the most important thing. And that idea of, just letting the experts getting on with it. And, we are, one of the few sort of groups of people who are still continuing to work. And our work is essentially to help people during this crisis, as is with many key workers and many other job roles. So I think it's really shone a light on
Mm.
healthcare workers, and there's almost like a brand. The NHS brand, I feel, has been revived. Do you think, is that true to say?
I think often people, it's pretty amazing that suddenly people are very kind of thank you for what you're doing,
Mm,
and it's a very different perspective because every day, day in, day out, I see my colleagues working their socks off to try and help people.
mm,
But now, because it's such a big thing and people are isolated, and it really has brought into the fray how hard everybody in these services work.
mm,
It's from the cleaners in the hospital to the managers to the consultants to the junior doctors to the nurses. Everybody's really working hard, and
mm.
and tragically, in many cases, putting their lives on the line for it.
Yeah.
It's I mean, we all live in our, even within medicine, within our silos, and we all see everybody working hard, but often you don't see your colleague in the next department working
Mm,
as hard, or and that's really pushed it into the foray.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
I would I think you're right. Branding is a very delicate thing,
Mm,
but I would be I I would be very reticent to say that we're doing better things or working harder. I think we work
Mm.
our socks off. I
Yeah, yeah.
really do. Um, it's just that it's not always seen.
Yes,
It's not.
absolutely. I think you're right. And I think it's not always seen internally. Like you say, I'm now working with colleagues who I would have passed in the corridor, and we're now working side by side. The hospital I'm working in, we're completely transforming our services to sort of cope with the crisis. Um, we're all in unfamiliar territory, and yeah, I'm building relationships with people I never would have built with, people who I've worked in hospitals for years. So internally, I think we're definitely seeing a lot more of how hard we're working too. And it's just that idea of perception, I think, of just understanding that actually we're all working hard, we're all trying to help people. And then I think externally as well, I guess, people are now also seeing that too, the public and general public, etc. So certainly, yeah, the visibility and perception is a lot higher now, which I think hopefully will be a good thing in the long run. So I guess coming from your background, you're a clinician, you've done some sort of different things in your life. Do you think you that has given you better preparation to sort of deal with what we're dealing with now on a sort of more personal level? Do you think the uncertainty we're surrounded by, and the idea of not knowing what your job's going to be like in 6 months, not knowing what's coming next? Because I think I can imagine for a lot of um, straight and forward narrow clinicians, they're probably really freaking out at the moment.
That's I think it's the ones that perhaps have tried different things on the way. I think we all have very different perspectives to life, and I think we
Mm,
all have unique, but not necessarily harder or worse challenges. Um, and I think if we've done different things and we've taken that step to say, okay, I want to stop for a certain amount of time, whether it be to pursue a dream or to pursue your own health or
mhm,
pursue, just take some time off, and that's fine. These are huge levels of uncertainty. I remember the first time I did that was probably in my late 20s, and I'm not going to say how long ago that was, but it was. I remember I had lots of people close to me, and lots of opposition
mm,
within work and outside of work, and
yeah.
saying, "What are you doing? You should be doing your exam. You should be doing this. You should be doing
Yeah,
that."
yeah,
And actually, those several months that I took off were the most productive of my life
mm,
for various things. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
and I had various reasons to do that, but it is terrifying. Um, I think it's I think in many ways it's terrifying for the whole population. I think there's going to be a I don't think it's a big secret there's going to be a big recession after this.
Mm,
So that's that's a that's a terrifying way forward. And
mm,
if you have sort of your finger in a few pies and experience of how what other people want,
mhm,
how they think, different views on, no, sorry, knowledge of different views
mm.
of how to go forward, then actually that can only be a good thing. Um, Am I worried? Yeah, of course we're all worried. We don't really know what's going to happen
No,
tomorrow,
no, no, no.
particularly if we're all stuck inside whenever we need to be.
Mm.
So,
Is
um,
there an element of maybe people in our society just not being comfortable with who they are, and perhaps not even knowing that? Because I mean, of course, there's a lot of uncertainty. Of course, we're in the middle of a crisis. Financially, there's a lot of things coming, but you know, currently, people are now in a position where they can't go out. They can't really distract themselves with whatever social activities they normally do. They're kind of stuck by themselves, stuck with their loved ones. And, it's kind of what we all wanted. Because 6 months ago, everyone was saying, oh, I just want time to sort of do a bit of mindfulness. I just want time to hang out with my friends. I just want time to do the things that I want to do. And now that they can, although it's restricted, and although it's in the middle of this pandemic, do you think there's an element of people perhaps not realizing they didn't actually want that? They didn't actually want to find out who they are and
I think for some people you're right. I got asked a very interesting question some weeks ago about whether this would be increase suicide rates or not.
Mm. Oh,
Um, And to be honest, my answer was, I don't know. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people are have their routine, they have their things that they do all the time, and they're comfortable with it, and sometimes it can be a bit too much.
Hmm.
And changes from that is as you mentioned, really, really hard. But equally, it could be a time for introspection. It could
Yeah.
be a time for, let's say, that business partner of yours that has the big house but never sees it gets to enjoy their garden a bit more, or sees their kids a bit
Yeah.
more, or
Hmm.
saying, well, actually, I want to work from home after this for 2 or 3 days a week if I can. Uh, or that suddenly I have time to think and increase my skills, or just learn a language or something. It
Hmm.
doesn't really necessarily matter.
Yeah.
For others, it'll be very difficult. I mean, that's no secret. So I don't know if it will. Certainly, in the past, in times of great adversity,
Hmm.
these rates have gone down.
Yeah.
And although there's been peaks in like, for example, the recession, overall, it's steadily going down. So it's that's an interesting question.
Mm.
I, I I think as a kind of slightly useless psychiatrist answer, it depends is the answer.
Well, it's an honest answer, so that's. I mean, that's fair enough. That's an honest and transparent sort of response to that. So, okay, fine. Well, why don't we end with one final question, which I'm just going to improv in my head right now. Um, what is the one thing you would like us to get from this entire pandemic as a society moving forward? Maybe related to healthcare, like the one thing that you wish we really maybe we haven't quite cracked it yet, or we have, and you wish it sustained in some way.
Mm, that's an interesting question. I think on a well, it's a real appreciation of public health. I think that would be.
Mm,
I think, and that's it's nothing to do with all of the stuff that we do. I think it's people are really appreciating that small but very, very certain measures can really stop things
yeah,
early in their tracks.
yeah.
Things like the importance of vaccination. We can see what a big deal it is without one vaccine. Forget the rest.
Mhm. Yeah.
So these really relatively simple things, and I think on a kind of wide level, that would be the biggest thing that I would want kids to know about,
Mhm.
and going ahead,
Yeah.
that you can stop things by doing very small population level things.
Mhm. What about climate change? I mean, maybe isn't coronavirus maybe a test for us to deal with
Well,
the
it's a
very big
test
issue of
for the
climate change
world
that
working
could be around
together.
the corner, you know? But I
You
guess
know,
similar principles, right? It's a similar principles
yeah, yeah, yeah.
of
It's a test for the world working together, doing small things
yeah,
to stop bigger things from happening. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
It's it's a test. Coronavirus is a test for governments to work together.
Mhm.
It coronavirus may discriminate against how much area you have around you, but it doesn't discriminate against your country or your country's policies or your
Yeah.
you know the, that is not somewhere where it does that. So
Mhm.
so you're absolutely right. It's anything where we have to work together as a group
Mhm.
of people, as a group of nations, as a group of whatever, and that is a really important thing. You're absolutely correct.
Mhm.
But I think for coronavirus specifically, it's the thing that I think realistically we can take away is the public health part of it.
Great.
And yeah, and I think you're right. The climate change is public health because
Mm.
people's life will change. That people will become ill through no fault of their own. They'll have various comorbidities related to climate change.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's all linked in together.
absolutely. Great. Okay. Well, we'll end there. So thank you very much to Samir, and that's been another episode of Uncertain Medics, and we'll catch you in the next one.